Ladies and gentlemen, the third finalist in the Longfellow Oration Contest. We are again watching for expressive and word-perfect execution. This will be a group effort by the Tipton Junior High 7th and 8th grade class. You may begin.
The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear.
The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere.
On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive. Who remembers that famous day and year?
Wait 1 minute. I remember I was there, and it was Paul Revere and William Dawes who made that ride.
I beg your pardon, sir, but who are you?
I am William Dawes, and it didn't begin at midnight either.
We didn't know that.
Neither did Mr. Longfellow, or at least he chose to ignore it. I'll tell you how it really happened.
Now, Paul was there all right. He and a group of patriots had been watching those redcoats for quite a few days. And in the evening, on April 18th, at about 10 o'clock, word arrived that the redcoats were preparing boats for crossing the Charles River.
I thought you didn't know if they were coming by land or sea, and you said they'd come by the river?
Indeed, and when he saw the regulars repairing their landing crafts, he figured something was afoot.
Being suspicious, 2 days earlier, Paul had made a trip to Concord and warned the residents there that redcoats were likely to be dispatched in the near future to seize the town's arms supply. The townspeople began to hide arms and valuables in barns, wells, and the neighboring swamps.
The regulars are coming out! The regulars are coming out!
Who in the world are you?
He's Paul Revere.
Oh my goodness, I'd like to shake your hand, sir. It's the famous Paul Revere like in the poem. Wait, didn't you actually call the British are coming? The British are coming?
No, I called the regulars are coming out.
Why did you call them the regulars? Aren't they the British?
We were all British subjects. It'd be funny to call them the British when we were also the British. We called them redcoats, regulars, and lobsterbacks. They sure hated that name.
Lobsterbacks?
Because of their red coats, they look like lobsters.
I hadn't thought about that. Tell me, what really happened next?
I needed to go to Lexington to warn Mr. Samuel Adams and the Honorable John Hancock that soldiers were marching.
We needed to warn them.
We couldn't be sure, but it was supposed they were going to Lexington by the way of the Cambridge River to take them. But maybe they would go to Concord to destroy the colony ammunition stores.
It was scary not knowing which way they would go. How were we going to warn them? Paul couldn't ride both roads at once.
You're right, it could get a bit tricky going 2 ways at once.
I returned at night from Concord through Charleston. There, I met with some gentlemen, and we agreed on a plan that if the British went out by water, we would show 2 lanterns in the north church steeple, and if by land 1 as a signal. We were apprehensive, as either way would be difficult to travel.
Send it! So you were only guessing which way they would go?
The probability of crossing the Charles River was most likely, so if that was the signal, I would ride and warn the residents along the route. We still weren't absolutely sure.
I had to go the longer, darker, and less known about route.
Hey, we just couldn't rule it out. So I asked young Dawes if he would like to ride along that route and warn the residents that the redcoats were coming. As I recall, he eagerly accepted.
The redcoats are coming, guys. It's dark out here. I told you the redcoats are coming.
If I had known it would erase me forever from history, I wouldn't have. But I did want to protect Misters Adam and Hancock and all of my neighbors. So I left Boston earlier in the evening than Paul Revere, taking the longer, darker, harder land route to Lexington, where we agreed to meet up.
It was only right, though. You couldn't have done anything else. And not a word of it in Mr. Longfellow's poem?
Not a word.
He got the rest of it right, though.
He said to his friend, if the British march by land or by sea, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light, one if by land and 2 if by sea. And I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to on.
Then he said goodnight, and with muffled oar.
Ha! That muffled oar was a lady's petticoat wrapped around the oar.
I'm not gonna ask how you got a lady's petticoat.
Then he said goodnight, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset British man of war. A phantom ship with each mast and spar, across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black cloak was then magnified by its own reflection in the tide.
Even the guy who hung the lanterns got more publicity than I did.
Meanwhile, his friend, through alley and street, wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms, and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore.
See what I mean? Nothing about my trials. Try this new verse. Meanwhile, his friend, who is just a lad, rode miles along roads, silent and dark, where every shadow appeared a stark redcoat, waiting to do something bad.
It just doesn't sound quite right, sir.
Well, what was Paul Revere doing while I was riding around with shadows chasing me? Sitting around waiting for a lantern.
2 lanterns, actually. I know that part. But mostly he watched with eager search to the belfry tower of the Old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer, then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes, till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. Now that's poetry.
I have to admit, Dawes was right.
Finally,
Mr. Longfellow did stretch a bit. I was off by 11, and it wasn't dark. The moon was shining bright. There were shadows chasing me too, and mine were real. I saw 2 officers on horseback standing under a tree. One of them started his horse. I turned my horse short about and rode upon a full gallop for Mystic Road. He followed me, and finding he could not catch me, returned. I proceeded to Lexington through Mystic and alarmed Mr. Adams and Colonel Hancock.
Ah, I know that part.
A hurried hoofs in the village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles, and passing a spark, struck out by the steed, flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the favored nation was riding that night, and the spark struck out by the steed, and his flight kindled the lamp into flame with its heat.
he has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him tranquil and broad and deep is the mystic meeting the ocean tides, and under that alders that skirt its edge is now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of the steed as he rides. Ha! We were supposed to meet in Lexington and warn Mr. Adams and Colonel Hancock together.
You got it an hour later. Lives were at stake. We were in a hurry.
I had 5 more miles to ride than you did.
At least we started in Concord together.
It was midnight by then.
It was 12 by the village clock when they crossed the bridge into Medford town.
We heard the crowing of the cock and the bark of the farmer's dog.
And felt the damp quiver of the fog that rises when the sun goes down.
It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington.
Wait a minute, you said it was midnight when you left Lexington. What time did you get to Concord?
Wrong! What does Longfellow say about Concord?
Well, it was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. No?
No!
Who are you? How do you know? Who is he?
He's Sam.
Dr. Samuel Prescott.
Doctor?
He's been third wheeling with us since Lexington.
Third wheeling. I joined you guys at midnight.
Oh, you rode too, did you? So the 3 of you were the heroes who warned Concord?
Not quite.
So you didn't make it all the way to Concord with these 2 gentlemen?
Oh, I made it all right. I'm the only one who made it. These 2 didn't.
Amazing. I didn't know that. What happened to you 2?
As I said, there were redcoats all over the place.
It's a miracle we weren't all hung as traitors after being captured.
You were all captured?
Momentarily. Some of us got away.
Well, they were pretty convincing, putting their pistols in my face and saying, if you go an inch further, you're a dead man.
But I got away.
And you, sir?
I was captured, but I used it to our advantage. They said they were just waiting for some deserters. I told them I knew better. I knew what they were after, and that I had alarmed the country, and I should have 500 men there soon.
Wow, I didn't.
We know you didn't know that.
Well, I didn't.
Finally, after a long time and abuse, they stole my horse and let me go with the tired one. As quick as I could, I went to the house where I left Mrs. Adams and Hancock and told them what had happened. This finally convinced them that they had to leave for a safer location, and I went with them. It's a good thing, too.
And
And why is that?
Not long after 5 o'clock in the morning, the Redcoats marched into Lexington. I found some important papers at Mr. Hancock's and got them out just before the Redcoats would have found them.
May I continue, sir? You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled.
How the farmers gave them ball for ball.
From behind each fence a farmer wall, chasing the redcoats down the way.
Then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road.
Only pausing to fire and load.
Is that part true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Revere warned the Messrs. Adam and Hancock and saved the papers. The good doctor was fortunately out riding, and he rode on the Concord and warned the people. This is better than the poem. Mr. Dawes, sir, after you escaped from the regulars, what did you do?
My horse bucked me off, and I had to walk back to Lexington.
I am impressed. Mr. Longfellow would have served you better if he would have put all of you in his poem. This will be better than word-perfect execution.
And so through the night rode Samuel Prescott,
William Dawes,
And Paul Revere! And through the night went their cry of alarm through every Middlesex village and farm.
Cry of defiance and not of fear.
A voice in the dark and a knock at the door.
and a voice that shall echo forevermore.
Born on the night wind of the past.
Through all our history to the last.
The hour of darkness, peril of eve.
The people will waken and listen to hear
The hurrying hoofbeats of their steeds.
and the midnight
Message of Prescott, Dawes, and